Hello everyone, Pastor George here. Sorry for the change of location. I actually filmed this earlier today, but I accidentally deleted it. So I'm doing it from home, and I'm downstairs in my dungeon. But hopefully this change of environment won't distract you too much. So today in Bible study, we looked at 1 Chronicles 17, 1 through 15, in keeping with our Through the Bible series. And in this passage, we have a very famous covenant, the Davidic covenant. And if you read this passage, it might be very familiar to you if you remember one of my older sermons when we were in 2 Samuel. So when you read this, read it first, look at it, absorb it, and then put a bookmark or one of the ribbons in it, and then look back and look at 2 Samuel 7 and compare and contrast. And you'll notice, just like I talked about on Sunday, that the context for this really changes the way that it's being interpreted. Remember, Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, were written after the return from exile and the building of the temple. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they were expecting a Messiah, and there hasn't been one yet. And so a lot of the way that it's structured is pointing us forward to the Chronicles and what is going to happen in the future, right? So it's looking back in order to be like, look how God has been faithful in the past. He's going to be so in the future. And there's a reading of the Messiah much more strongly in a lot of these passages. A lot more of an interest in showing how previous promises or previous prophecies point us towards the Messiah. So you see this. If you look at this passage, you'll notice at the end, right, when it's talking about the one who's going to sit on the throne, it says his kingdom will be forever, right? His throne will endure forever. Things like that, right? And if you go to 2 Samuel, you'll notice there's a lot of similarities, except it's talking more to David. It says your throne will endure forever, right? Or to Solomon, how it's going to punish the iniquities of this person. And you'll notice that those have been removed, again, not because the author of Chronicles is trying to censor or change history. He knows that you can go to 2 Samuel. He quotes it almost word for word in this passage, right? So not a cynical approach to it, but what is he doing is he wants to highlight certain sections and draw our attention to them, especially when it has to do with the Messiah. So one of the questions we talked about today was, who is the son that it's being referred to? In 2 Samuel, I would say it's very clearly Solomon who it's referring to. Of course, it has parallels to Christ. But in 1 Chronicles, it's much more clear that it's in this hope of this future messianic king. And so this is where we get to talk really interestingly about near and far fulfillment of prophecy. So in the Bible, there's lots of prophecy, especially in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament as well. And there is both near and far fulfillment of that. So for instance, the best example of this is in Hosea. In Hosea, it says, out of Egypt I have called my son, right? And that's referring to Israel being taken out of Egypt. But in the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew uses that as a foreshadowing of Christ. When he and his family flee to Egypt to escape Herod, Matthew says, thus it was fulfilled in the prophet when he said, out of Egypt I have called my son, right? So now, what is the near fulfillment of that? Well, the near fulfillment of that was obviously the people being brought out of Egypt, right? That's the near fulfillment. But the far fulfillment of that, what that points to is Jesus being a true Israel. Like, that's kind of the whole thing with Matthew, is how he fulfills all of the people in the Old Testament perfectly in a better way, right? The new Moses, the new and better Moses, the new and better David, the new and better Israel, right? That's all Jesus. And so you have that going on, right? That's an example. So here in the Davidic covenant, you have a near fulfillment. Solomon is going to be the one to build the temple. But you also have a far fulfillment in that this promise of this king who's going to come and his reign is going to last forever is found in the Messiah, not in David or Solomon, right? Yes, of David's line, but not in them, but in a bigger and grander way. And so this is really important to keep in mind. I wanted to highlight this passage because when you're reading 1 Chronicles, as I hope you will, I want you to pay special attention to when it points you to the future or seems to reference the Messiah or the temple, because the temple was built already during the time of 1 Chronicles, the second temple after they returned. And so what is it pointing us to? So I want you to focus on that, and I hope this is interesting to you. I'll be around tomorrow to make my video then, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Peace out from the dungeon.